Hola, hola. I am Trek with two Ks,
And I am 3D, and welcome to Metaverses the Other Side.
brought to you here on the Gentleman of Crypto Network. Just a heads up, this episode is before we had the idea of bringing the Twitter spaces to the Gentleman of Crypto Network. And so that's why we're talking about the stuff that we're talking about in this episode.
Well, we are in. Um, this was a bit awkward, but we're having tons of issues just trying to get the space started. Twitter wouldn't even let us like go off of the preset space. Well, let us open it. So this is where we're at. Just give us a few seconds to get this all set up. Share account, which I was not able to get into the space. Last time I had to host it from this account, I was actually able to get it. Able to have basically both of you in here at the same time. Here you go. Oh, Brosi, we'll see you on adding you on as co-host. Brosi, it wouldn't even let me redo from that saved one. I had to start a fresh one.
Really?
It kept closing out the entire app, just kept dropping.
So it would open, so I had to do the reconnect. And then when I would get to like where it's like started, the little black bar part would come up, but it wouldn't it wouldn't show the tab to start it. Like it was just black. And then I closed that out and then try to like do the whole app over. I don't understand what's going on today, but shit is what it is right now. Nonetheless, we definitely just like got caught up in today. Like, I'm still
Yeah.
playing Soldier, and like I knew today was Thursday. And I was like, all right, I gotta finish doing this thing online, to play the Soldier side, and then I'm gonna eat and I'm gonna watch and I didn't even think about the movie thing actually. I started watching it, and then something happened where I was like, oh yeah, so I got time to do this online course thing. And then I was like, wait a minute, I got something else going on today. And then it just all came, and I was like, and this was like maybe 2 hours before. And I went to finish watching the movie, and then I started trying to set up the room. It wouldn't let me set up the room. And I thought it was because of where I'm at in my building. And it seems like it just is actually a Twitter thing, and it wasn't the building. And then I tried to text you, and I thought the text went through. So yeah. Apologies for the future folks who are listening to this, but y'all ain't even gonna know that we
Yeah.
started late. Y'all ain't even gonna know.
Yeah.
You just gonna
Like,
get
I'll be honest with you, I was sitting here building an image for a game I made, and I was like, hey, my phone's been really silent. Like, I know I don't get notifications or anything, but I had Twitter up on the computer the whole time, not one notification for like 3 hours. And I didn't think anything of it because I was just like, whatever. And then when you called, I went on my other phone, like my master phone that has the original accounts and stuff on it and stuff. And it was like notification 700 or something. I was like, what the fuck? What did I just miss? Um, but Irish Girl Crypto had sent a thing out, and she basically had a bunch of people follow me. And I guess Twitter thought that was sus and just put my my account on silent for me.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we got Xavier in the house.
What's going on, sir? Hold on. Wait, no, I'm trying to.
I just sent him an invite to speak.
Okay.
Um,
So, yeah. So, all right. let's try to get a quick recap in regards to we are running through a series of different movies, TV shows, and things that talk about metaverses or the metaverse, right? And we are kind of making this comparison and evaluation. It's not even scientific. Arguably, is very biased to how we individually and collaboratively look at what we consider to be metaverses, plural, because there's more than one metaverse and there's multiple types of metaverses, at least for how we define it. And so we came up with the idea like a week ago. Last week's movie was Johnny Mnemonic, and this week's movie is another early 90s sci-fi classic, Lawnmower Man 2. And I would like to preface this with, we are not going to get into the quote and cinematography and directorship style per se about this movie, because it was the 90s and there was a whole lot of stuff you could do back then. And like, it's still, for the time period, it was quote acceptable. Other thing to note is, like, bruh, when I tell you, if you look at the YouTube videos or reviews of this, they go in roasting the shit out of Lawnmower Man 2.
What?
Yes.
It was a good movie.
You know, until I listened to some of the I was like, and we haven't think of that part that way. But then what I also realized was some of the people they may have been like sci-fi people, but they were technical people. If you get what I'm saying.
I do get like, like as in like tech and stuff like that. And I do get how like, I understand that the second movie does ruin some of the lore from the first movie. I understand that, but in general, like, especially compared to nowadays, it's not a bad movie. I've seen worse, unfortunately.
That's true. So, okay. So, I also preface to know, spoiler alert. We're definitely going to talk about like some of what goes on in the movie. And so if you're one of those like, oh no, don't spoil it for me. I mean, I don't know what the odds are of someone watching this after we talk about it. You might be curious as far as like the metaverse elements to it, but for the movie itself, that's a whole nother thing. But we're still going to talk about stuff. So before we jump into that, I do want to make a couple of other more house cleaning related announcements. On one, we will be speaking at the Crypto Mindset Reset virtual conference, which will be in December. Was that the 13th and the 14th, or was it the 12th and the 13th? Do you remember?
I think it's the 12th and the 14th. I don't really remember. It's got moved so many times.
Right. But nonetheless, it's going to be out then. And then the other thing to note is we are taking these recordings and we will be moving them over onto a YouTube channel, which will be within the Gentlemen of Crypto Network. And we're going to do some interesting things on the visual side of it. So once we get that ball rolling, like, be ready. Like, it's going to be like on, what's the name of that show? Midnight Gospel. If you know about that cartoon, Midnight Gospel, and how that was put together with the podcast and then the cartoon part of it. I mean, we don't got the animation budget like that, but we're going to do some things. That's what I'm going to say. We're going to do some things. And also to note, typically every Thursday, as it is right now, we are here on Twitter Spaces where we do this live recording. And so, yeah, that's generally how we go today. Just a number of things kind of happened that pretty much escaped the both of us, but yeah, we still gonna do this thing, right? What was the other thing to know? Other thing to know, we are working on a second hackathon. And this go around, we got more Bitcoin to give away. We got some other prizes to give away, and we got some swag stuff to give away. Um, I don't know if to say all of the details just yet, but no, we got more stuff to give away, and we're gonna make the challenge be something more along the lines of a first, second, and third place winner versus what we did in the first iteration. So yeah, more details to come on that. Just build a DAO account, follow that to learn more and how that's gonna be rolled out. So let's get into the movie. Where do you want to start, bro? Where do you want to start?
I think we should start kind of at like the how they're kind of like the start of the movie, like how everyone else is getting in, basically, because there is that VR aspect in this one. And so yeah, basically what I'm saying is when the people in the movie, when they're getting into their internet or their metaverse, very similarly, they put something over their eyes, they attach them in their hands, they are in a seat. So they can, I don't like how they have their seats. Their seats are reclined backwards so you can actually walk and move and stuff or whatever. But I think the punk kids, they were just in roll arounds and they use still 3.5 floppy disk to jump into these things. And so that's basically how they were doing everything over what I would say, dial up basically, or DSL maybe. And that's, I think part of what that, right, let's analyze that a little bit. Like the way they get in, how would you rate that as in reality versus unreality?
Okay, so it's funny that you bring that on, bro, because I so wanted to talk about that. What got me was the audio. And I was just like, wait. Why is there this sound? Why does it have to be this like rushing of a physical object moving extremely fast from point A to point B? Like, why was that sound chosen? Because here's what I know. When I jump into Oculus, I don't hear none of that. And
Yeah.
I don't know. When I was first watching the movie last week, I didn't pay attention to that. And then when I was watching it today, I was just like, wait a minute. Why is there this sound? Like, what made this be the sound? It doesn't sound pleasant. It doesn't sound inviting. And I don't know what
I actually,
go ahead.
I gotta say this. Okay. So I watched this guy named Finar, and he's like one of the top YouTube editors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Finzar, my bad, Finzar, his entire YouTube channel is explaining to people why his content is as top as it is and how to do it, right? So, and one of the things he always says is when you're watching something, when people are watching something and they see something moving, they want to hear something. So all the air you have to pretend is as thick as possible. So even if it's just words moving across the screen, you should hear some kind of sound in it. It's the whole visual to audio that connects the person watching now. And to be honest, like most of my life, I thought it was just some gimmick they did in this movie thinking, wow, that's stupid. You know, because they always had those in the 90s, right? They always had weird gimmicks in the movies. But then when I watched Finzar the first time, and that was one of the first videos I saw, he was explaining the words, subtitles, how to do subtitles in a good manner or whatever. And he was like, all my subtitles make a swoosh sound.
Okay. I you know what? When you explain that part of it, I can get it. Like I said, but when I look at it in comparison to like what it actually, how going into a virtual space works now, like when I go into Decentraland, when I go into one of the Oculus platforms, when I go into what's Mozilla? Mozilla Hub?
Yeah, hubs.
Right. Like that's not the sound.
Well, I'm glad you don't play any of the anime metaverses because they're not like when I get into the anime metaverses, they're not like making the same noise. But when I'm actually playing in the metaverse and I'm like walking around or they're supposed to, yeah, I get it all the time. But you're right, like jumping in and stuff, none of that. I kind of forgot that in the movie they have the like when you log in, you almost like drop in into some
Right.
kind of,
Like,
and it's not
okay.
like that anywhere.
But okay, so then that goes to another thing. Was that just a 90s thing? Because they did the same thing in like, I feel like it was Ghost in the Shell, and it was another 90s cartoon that was related to like cyberspace activity that I cannot remember the name of right now. But visually they did that same thing of like you drop in and I can't fucking think of who that is. So it's like
The Animatrix,
is it animation? No,
they did that too.
that wasn't who I was thinking of. But like, was that just a 90s thing that carried over? Like now I'm kind of
Yeah,
curious on
I think so.
where did that concept come from of here is how you as the physical real world entity will cross into this ether virtual barrier. Like, why does it visually look like that? Where's is there even science behind that? Or was it like, oh, this is gonna be a cool graphic and like boom, president and everyone else mimics and copies and variates that visual aspect of here's what it's supposed to look like when you enter the metaverse or a virtual reality space.
I think that's probably the best explanation is it looks cool. Yeah, I mean, because like, what's the other alternative? Remember the actual Matrix, when he goes into things, he only does that fall-in animation type thing into it once. Every time after that, it's just instantly in there, right? Like what we see now, like when I go into Decentraland, it just boom, I'm there, right? But even Decentraland does have a drop-in. Like when you first load Decentraland the very first time and you build your character and stuff, they have all the information on how to get started. There is a spot where you can actually fall into your first server. So I think it's generally just it looks cool, bro, type thing.
Okay. No, I'll accept that. I will accept that. I understand that part of it. Um, okay, here's something else that I thought was interesting. The hardware may not have the most stylish, but the footprint of it was smaller. Like silhouette footprint was smaller than what was in Johnny Mnemonic. Think about that.
Yeah. This one was more like bare bones, you know.
But like for what they were conveying as quote the experience of how that being the UI for the UX and what it seemed like they were conveying that they were experiencing and going through, like you're riding a motorcycle, you're running through the forest, like all off of the sunglasses. Funny enough, what did those remind me of? Not Ray-Bans. What's the military glasses? God damn it. What is the name of these glasses right now? I cannot.
Like the aviator glasses?
No, those were aviators. It's more like you'd see them on like, God, I have the picture of the glasses in my face, but I cannot remember the name of them right now. But they're a very popular military brand, and it's more on the like operator special force side. They're very sleek, but it reminded me of that. And I was like, wow, this is the 90s though. Like, damn, they were kind of putting it ahead. It was little things. It was little things that were kind of ahead of where I kind of would have thought, you know what I'm saying, it would be for the time. Oh, okay. Let me finish this particular part right here. As far as like, I thought that was pretty dope for the size of the devices that work as the user interface. Granted, for what the kid hackers were using versus like what the professional was doing, like their level of access and resource and like the newer high tech stuff. I thought it was interesting just to know like wasn't that far off compared to like how it looked in Mnemonic, where what the local folks are using as far as like their hardware and their interface stuff. Like I said, and again, that whole theme in the 90s of like something was sticky and have wires on it of some sort,
Yeah.
you know. I thought that was interesting. But I also thought that was cool. And then the way that there's like a quick scene where he explains to that scientist like how the glasses work to connect to your brain thoughts. It made me think of this book that Stan Lee wrote. It was like his last working graphic novel. I think it's called Allegiance or Alliance or something. And basically like alien technology comes to Earth and some things happen, blah, blah, blah. But like one of the things that someone was trying to do with the technology was they were trying to use it as a way to control like larger society, the whole planet. And what they were looking to do was be able to send signals to the brain through smart devices. Glasses would have been a thing, watches, your phone, AirPods. It made me think of that. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so that concept or the conversation around how do you transmit or how do you interface with the human mind in connecting like physical devices.
Mm-hmm. Go down. I know there was actually a technology patent for that. And they use your monitor though, or your TV. But that is a good point. Like, it seems like back in the 90s where the ideal of connecting electronics to the brain was first real, like there was a game that came out and you put this thing on and it went around your head like a circlet, and it had 4 nodes that went on top of your head to keep the circlet in place. And you could make a ball go up and down.
Oh, I
by
remember that.
controlling how, yeah, you just can, your brain literally controls how strong the motor is going. And the way it worked on was it was actually fake. It wasn't actually reading your brain waves or anything. I think it was using the heat of your skin. It was reading basically the temperature of your skin to increase or decrease the motor. Nowadays they have a version that does read your brain thoughts, and it's the exact same company and everything like that. They just actually eventually got to a point where they could do it. But I think that's where a lot of those ideals from the movies came out. Because if I remember right, that game that I'm talking about actually came out in like 1990, 1991 or something like that. And every movie after that, you see some version of it where they talk about either it being on the head to talk to the brain, or just people in general being able to communicate with the brain. And then you have like old books from the 40s and 30s that used to talk about if you really want to control somebody, you go to the source, their brain. And 1948 or whatever has a thing in there where they talk about how they can actually control your thoughts and stuff like that as well. So I think it's a lot more than just practicality. I think it's just like something humans have thought about a long time.
Yo,
control that brain.
I seen something the other day. I think it was yesterday. There was a post about some guy, and I was like, "This can't be real." But I didn't look into it. Look into it. But there was a post talking about um some developer made a virtual reality where if you died in the virtual reality, you would die in real life, and it made me think of like a number of animes that are based on like the whole MMO thing. Sword Online, I think like the first season, like a number of kids die off of that when the system takes over and like the creator does what he does. And I was like, wow, like, is this how that starts? Like somebody comes up with the idea now and down the road, all it takes is that one glitch, a couple thousand people just stuck.
Yeah, well, if yeah, I think there's practicalization to that, but yeah, I think the someone comes up with the ideal and then people rag on it and then it becomes a thing. Because I know in video games, hardcore mode, like it's been a thing since like 93, 94, where previously you played a game, you died in the game, big whoop, you kept going. And then they did like Resident Evil did the whole thing where they started tracking how long it took you to play, because it no longer, they were like, well, we don't give a fuck how many times you die. We're just going to track how long it takes. Well, before that was the hardcore was the thing, and Diablo 2, I think, were the first two games I remember that people loved to play on hardcore. Before that, people didn't want to play hardcore. They were like, well, I don't want to lose everything. And then people on the other ones were like, they got so good where there were people that were playing the same hardcore character for, now there are actually people playing the same hardcore character for over a decade. And it's like, okay, there's some clout to that, right? So I think that if you could have a VR space or a metaverse space where it's the same thing, surviving that longer and longer just gives you more clout possible.
Good point. Sweet. That'd be another thing to
And I
check
do
out.
think that's going to be something that's going to happen eventually. Like there's already laws now, or pods is what I meant to say. There are already pods now that you can get in America that randomly kill you. Like you were basically agreeing to die. You can get in a suicide pod and it will randomly kill you by basically putting, was it hydrogen or something like that, completely in the air that you're inhaling. And you get to a point where you just have no more oxygen to inhale and you die. But,
Does
you know,
that
like
count as assisted
people are
suicide?
crazy. No, it is not.
Hmm. Okay.
It's the few states that the few states that do allow it in America, they have it listed as um approved suicide or something like that. And there was one state talking about they were going to replace the injection method with one of these because this one is actually faster, quicker, and like you die so quickly, your eyes are still going to be open.
Wow. That's scary, bro.
Yeah.
Scary. Okay. All right.
No, what's scary is that, you got those pods they put out for homeless people. Well, all they have to do is slowly replace those with suicide pods and no one would know.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry we got so dark, folks. I'm sorry, but I'm intrigued. I am intrigued right now, but I'm gonna pull it back and let's get back to this movie. Um, there was another thing. I wish I'd have like actually took notes when I was watching this. Um, so okay, the other thing to know, which I wouldn't have put together if it weren't for listening to one of the critiques, where they were like, so the kid is the only one from the original movie aside from what's his name, and um he's supposed to be a couple years older, like teenage years, but they're like in the future. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, how far off are we for where we have a virtual world and we have X amount of real world things connected to the virtual world. Because like, technically speaking, you don't need virtual reality to do the thing of controlling any device that's online, right? So like, I
Right.
get where they were going with that, but then I was also just like, okay, like we have things online now. So you were there in regards to that whole thing of systems and networks in real world being accessible and controllable online. But they took it to the next level of being, no, in the virtual reality, you can control the stuff from here. Which, remember the thing that I sent you about that the movie? That's what happens in that cartoon movie I was telling you about.
Yeah, I still gotta watch that.
Like,
Um,
yeah. But I thought
now,
that was
now
interesting.
I will say that we're not far away from that. If anything, you could probably do that now. Like I've actually, there was a guy, Mudahar on YouTube, and honestly, he did a thing where he slept in Minecraft through VR on like some of the highest like setup you could get. Like he actually had like I think it was 2 computers to run his virtual space because it was high end graphics. It almost looked real, and he did it for sleep therapy correction to correct his sleeping patterns and stuff, right? And it actually worked for him. And I know in Japan, New York City, some areas in California, and some areas in Texas, there are people that have mapped out entire towns, and they do updating through the security camera feed. So like they actually have a continuously updated version of these cities that you can experience completely in VR. Not only that, but it will watch people around you. So you have to have one of the VR headsets that have external cameras, but basically it turns your entire reality into virtual reality. And you can, from that point on, if you live in the suns, wherever, you can go shopping in VR while actually going shopping in real life. In the VR, there are gestures for turning on and off your lights. And so you have to have everything set up through Google, unfortunately, but you can 100% control everything in your house with VR and never take off your VR, never take off your power gloves. And you just there. It's habitable.
Yo, what was I just listening to? And so, okay, spam. Okay. So, yesterday on the Wevolution, which is another Twitter space that I host, for those of you who don't know, um, I do more than one Twitter space as a co-host, right? And so we were talking about this dude, Burmer Lee, Tim something Lee, and he is accredited with being the inventor of the internet, right? The World Wide Web. I have whatever is on that, but nonetheless, that's how he's being written up online right now. And he's going on this whole media on tour blitz to promote his product, which is called Solid. And he says that Web3 is not Web 3.0, and blockchain being used to build the next iteration of the internet is BS. So what you were just in reminded me of what he was talking about with his him and his partner's product, where like the whole idea is about like owning and controlling your data, and then being able to change the relationship dynamic between us as entities that generate data and companies that use the silo revenue model or business model for how they capture our data and then like make money off of it. The point is, he was talking about a way in where like your home could be controlled through the whole like smart devices thing, and like that would be your data for like how much toilet paper are you using, how often did you buy eggs, or like when do you usually uh you know like make breakfast and stuff like that in the morning. And it just made me think of that, which is okay, which goes into another interesting thing that was said in the movie. And they said it more than once, where it was like, you log into the system, they automatically know everything about you because basically all of your information would be captured. Did you catch that?
Yeah. The iris fingerprinting is the reference there. So the ideal is those things they put on your eyes, it takes an image of your irises. And because they have fingerprinting already done, every time you go into one, it fingerprints you and it matches you to your previous iris fingerprints. And that, you're right, like that's something we'd see, but for the time of back then, because even back then they didn't do a whole lot of like customer accounting and stuff like that. It wasn't like it is in like the late 90s where if you bought something from Walmart tracked the customer number, blah, 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 bought this object or whatever. But they had the right ideal, obviously, because that is something that we see constantly now, not just the fingerprinting of people, but also attracting it to things they do.
Yeah. What was the other thing? There was something else. Okay. So jumping back one, I guess that idea of the fingerprinting going on and then being able to have access to everything. But you know what else I thought was interesting though? The way there was a what's the word I'm looking for? There was a implied technological advancement in the movie for like how he was able to connect to everything. Cause like, here's the other thing I realized. They make no actual point to say like, oh, well, everyone's using metaverses or everyone's using this metaverse. Am I wrong? Like, so
Well,
that part where he got the president and like the other world leaders to go into the system. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah. And
but like prior to that, it doesn't seem like there is any real mention of like, oh, there are multiple metaverses or there are different like private and public sector metaverses. So like the company, which I can't remember the name for the guy's company. It just, that part kind of dawned on me when I was watching that scene where all of the world leaders jump into the metaverse, and I was like, wait, what about the other metaverses? Like, how did y'all just become the quote one?
now, this is something I see in every metaversal movie. Any movie that has metaverse involved, they all do this. And I think it's because if there was more than one metaverse in that movie or any of the movies, like even think Ready Player One, if all the metaverse that you see in Ready Player One was actually multiple metaverses, whatever, they got it, it ruins the plot. The guy's company wouldn't be worth enough to hand over to people. The world leaders wouldn't jump in to Lawnmower Man's 2's metaverse. They wouldn't jump in like that. They would just jump into another one and then redirect what they're doing to the other metaverse through a non-direct connection type thing. And so they kind of need that as plot armor, because that's something I complain about all the time, especially when people talk to me and they're like, well, it's not like Ready Player One. It's not all the same. It's like, well, why in the fuck would it be?
Hold on,
Like, it
hold
doesn't
on.
make any sense.
No, in Ready Player One, though, the whole thing was that it started off as multiple metaverses, and then he made a protocol that worked to make it that you can like bridge everything together. So it's different.
No, you need to go back and rewatch it. He buys everything out. because you can't have IPs bridged like that. He doesn't just make the protocol. If you actually watch it, he
I go back
makes
and
the
read the book.
entire
I gotta go
the
back and read
entire
the book,
thing they
bro.
do. No, don't read the book. The book is not the same. That's why I was like, the book and the movie are not equivalent.
Okay,
Just like
see,
with Lawnmower
I'm
Man,
going
the
off of the
original
book.
books are not equivalent to the movies. Yeah, because the movie he actually buys, like it's all owned by one entity, and it's an entire ecosystem that is built by that one entity. And he just solely buys all the IPs and like buying off the actual companies for them to exist all together. And when most people talk about Ready Player One, that's all they talk about is the movie. Most people didn't even know there was a book or actually a book series.
See, and that's my issue right there. Because that's what I feel like I understood in the book, was that there were multiple things, and then he came in and changed the whole game because he was able to bridge everything together. And so,
Yeah, like the book, it's a bit different. And at the same time, though, at the end of the book, everything is owned by one entity.
yeah, that part, yeah, but it didn't start off that way. And there is an acknowledgement in the book of different sections before everything gets owned by them as the lion's share. Okay, so
Yeah, see, like in the movie, it plays out. This guy's just building a game that contains all games, and it slowly turns into the metaverse that they know of. But yeah, huge difference.
all right, I still need to go and read that back over again, but yeah, so
back to Lawnmower Man.
but that's
tangenting off.
okay, but that's a good point too, as far as like the ability of
The plot armor.
So this then goes to the point of like being able to storytell in like narrative of, all right, we have to consolidate in order to be able to maintain people's attention, and it's just going to be one thing. Because like I said, like it definitely didn't click to me until that one scene, and I was like, wait a minute, there's no mention of other metaverses, because the other part before that was he was trying to get the senator to give him the green light for the license. And it's like,
yeah.
Well,
and you know what that license is about, right? Like, if you remember in the first Lawnmower Man, the guy who invented the system, he kept telling Joe, you got to keep your heart rate down. You got to be careful, because basically you could have a heart attack or a stroke or a seizure, is what the main worries of concern was, right? So you could die because of one of these three reasons. And the Lawnmower Man 2, though, the whole the way everybody plugs in is there's basically you're almost directly connected to electricity. So Joe puts into the system that the electricity stuff that you have on is how he can kill you. So that license allows him to basically legally